Visualize a middle income family with many children, some of them showing world-class potential. Visualize another family, already well off, luring the best kids from that middle income family, keeps them forever, taps their potential, and benefits hugely. Time to wake up to the long-standing reality of the US being the biggest beneficiary of India's best human resources. Is the US snatching our brains and competencies? Or are our kids fleeing our country, disillusioned by its broken policies and systems? Welcome to the curious case of India's CEO curse, where our competent hands become CEOs elsewhere. The context, of course, is another Indian CEO in the US, Parag Agrawal of Twitter. The latest in a list that keeps getting longer: Indra Nui, Sundar Pichai, Satya Nadella, Arvind Krishna, Ajay Banga, Shantanu Narayan, Raghu Raghuram, Ivan Menezes, Vasant Narasimhan, Punit Ranjan, and now Parag Agrawal. As always, there is euphoria in India over another Indian being elevated as the CEO in a US company, an opinion that Indians make the best CEOs. However, this time is slightly different. Questions are being asked whether we should celebrate this or contemplate. Farmer, soldier, entrepreneur G.R. Gopinath wrote in the Hindu, "Can India rightfully bask in the reflected glory of those who left its shores and rose to the very pinnacle of their profession in a foreign land? Is this not the US's achievement? Is it not the fertile ecosystem of the US that helps spot talent and allows people to rise to the top?" Gopinath writes that we cannot but feel a tinge of sadness and says, India, even after 7 decades of independence, is mired in poverty and inequality, while our most gifted head for the West. There are others who have advised contemplation, like Seshadri Kumar, a BTech from IIT Bombay who did his MS and PhD in the US, but unlike most others, returned to India. Kumar commented on The Wire, "I believe that intelligence is not endemic to any race or country. I believe that it is spread uniformly among all the people in the world. And so, if a dozen of the top CEOs in the world come from a country with 18% of the world's population, why would I be surprised?" What should be worrisome is how our IITs are turning virtual training grounds to supply top talent from India to the US. Seshadri Kumar wrote, "For the majority of IITians, the entire goal of going to IITs is to leave India and go abroad. When I was a student there 30 years ago, more than 2/3 of my graduating BTech class went to the US, myself included. I was one of the few who returned." So what do we make of the joint entrance examinations to get into the IITs? A sort of national competition to get out of India? Fact is, the US does not forge ahead because of the 1% of Indians there or the dozen odd Indian CEOs, but it's the other way around. It's those 1% of Indians who queued up for US visas to reach their dream country. To be sure, the Microsofts, the Googles, the Apples, and the Twitters of the US existed without the Indians, and our professionals have only joined them on work. In that sense, the Chinese professionals are way better off because they've got world-beating companies right at home to work for, like Alibaba, Tencent, Xiaomi, Huawei, Didi, ByteDance, Lenovo, ZTE, and many more. I asked Tony Thomas, Chief Digital and Information Officer of Amsterdam-based Signify, who spent most of his life in the US with names like EY, Citibank, and GE, the relevance of another Indian CEO in the US.
I think this makes sense in a couple of ways. Number one, because it shows that we have broken the glass ceiling, and when one of us have broken the glass ceiling, it paves way for others also to move up. Second, we studying in India can be the top person in any part of the world, in any size company. But the real question is this enough? The last I checked, the Forbes 2000 list had 2,000 companies over $8 billion of market cap. There are about 1,000 unicorns, companies over 1 billion valuation in the startup world. How many true top guys are there from India?
Crypto evangelist and founder CEO of US-based technology services firm Chance River, Nitin George Eapen, shared with me even stronger views about the Indian CEO euphoria.
In fact, Indians, rather than celebrating, should feel ashamed when something like this happens. It just means that India could not provide the opportunities for people like this to be groomed this way. So, what we have is this pride based on some virtual line or something called national borders. It is this ego or patriotism. Is that what we should be aiming for? Is the question.
Do Indians have some special talent or skill sets to become CEOs? Epen doesn't think so.
More than a skill, I would say it's a characteristic is that we are accustomed to obeying orders without questioning the higher up and working so hard. We tend to do whatever the boss tells us to do and we follow it to the dot.
Tony Thomas feels that the relevant question to ask is whether Indians becoming CEOs in the US makes any difference to Indians in India.
Most of the CEOs that we celebrate today in the US, how many of them would ever come back to India to settle down in India? How many of them would ever create jobs in India? How many of them would ever do something to improve the education or the social status of the folks back in India? So I think it's not just about where you come from, it's about where you belong. So in that sense, I'm not really sure all this excitement and celebration and euphoria over someone of Indian origin becoming a CEO in an American company makes a big difference to anyone in India.
Indian CEOs with multi-million-dollar pay packets in the US are a stark contrast to millions of Indians in India begging for jobs. This week we witnessed up north in Uttar Pradesh, police lathi charging job seekers, and down south in Kerala, sports persons seeking jobs tonsuring their heads in protest. What India needs is a conducive ecosystem that will convince our youth that they have a bright future right in their home country. Just the opposite seems to be happening. A study by the Afro-Asian Bank says that 7,000 high net worth individuals left India in 2019. And the Times of India reports that there has been a 63% increase in inquiries in 2020 for residence by investment or citizenship by investment. Remember, Parag Agrawal was a physics Olympiad gold medalist way back in 2001 when he was only a teenager. We couldn't retain him and he saw his future in the US, not back home. Nothing wrong in appreciating Indian achievements abroad. Go ahead, clap for Parag. But contemplate too about the curious case of India's CEO curse. We always knew we don't get to taste the best prawns or the best fruits produced in India. They're meant for export. Now we know we don't get to taste our best CEOs either. This video is dedicated to another outstanding Indian, born in Mumbai, migrated to New Zealand, and last week came back to India to unleash the full force of his talent against India right in his hometown. Ajaz Patel, New Zealand cricketer who took all 10 Indian wickets in an innings in the Mumbai Test. Only the third person in history to do so after Jim Laker and Anil Kumble. Thank God the US is not seriously into cricket as yet. Or our own 10 wicketer Anil Kumble might just have done that 10 wickets in an innings feat for the US team, not India. Who knows?